First, that is the point. This scheme that they continue to violate has a reason behind it, a good government reason. And it basically says, stick someone in there while you get your act together. And then all you have to do is nominate and confirm. And that means like a valid candidate his party controls. It shouldn't be all that hard, but you want some minimal kind of competence. Lindsay Halligan really is like absolute zero, right? Has never stepped foot inside a prosecutor's office. And this woman, I think, has no federal prosecutorial experience either. And so the scheme is, and it's a sensible, good government one. Now the court appoints, and then you make your submission to the Senate. And if you do something that's not professional, that's where the Senate comes in. Now, notice what she's actually getting all churlish about. It's the blue slip process. So there are, Senator Coons says, I'm not going to approve her. And there is, you can take issue with it. And Trump this is what's now coming up with Lindsay Halligan, who they've now actually nominated to be U.S. Attorney. No way in the world she's going to get there. And for starters, she won't even get to the floor because so unqualified is she that the Democratic senators from Virginia will not submit the blue slips. Now, that's one of the few remaining tools that senators who have basically surrendered again and again and genuflected to Trump are eager to keep. They like that little prerogative, Republicans and Democrats alike. Trump had already took a run at Senator Grassley, who's the head of the Judicial Committee, saying, get rid of it. And they said, we like it. This gives us certain powers within our state. Now, I wonder what the hell he's thinking with Halligan, because she can't get there even on a merits vote. But maybe this is a way, along with what's happening in Delaware, to have a sort of...
All right, everyone. Another fake Trump interim United States attorney just quit, resigned, was forced out because they've been exposed as a fake United States attorney with zero qualifications for the job. And we're seeing federal judges assert themselves across this country right now in various districts, saying enough is enough. Donald Trump keeps appointing these fake interim United States attorneys who are allowed to keep their jobs for a 120-day period. And the judges are finally stepping in and basically evicting these squatters from positions they never should have held in the first place. Let me explain how this is supposed to work, because understanding the system shows just how badly Trump is abusing it. When there's a vacancy for a United States attorney position, the president can appoint someone on an interim basis for 120 days. That gives time to find a qualified candidate and get them confirmed by the Senate. The interim appointment's term can be made official if they're confirmed by the Senate, or their term can be extended if the federal judges of that district vote to extend it. That's the check and balance built into the system. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. But Trump is picking people with zero federal prosecutorial experience who are not qualified for these positions. That's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of many legal scholars, and most importantly, the opinion of the federal judges who are refusing to extend their interim terms. Trump is unable or unwilling to put qualified candidates for United States attorney positions before the Senate, so he's trying to keep unqualified loyalists in these jobs indefinitely by just ignoring the law and hoping nobody enforces it. And finally, judges are saying no. They're basically evicting these fake prosecutors because they're squatting in positions they have no legal right to hold. Despite court orders saying you're not allowed to hold this position anymore, we've seen these Trump appointees refuse to leave. We saw this with Alina Habba in the District of New Jersey. She wouldn't leave even after judges disqualified her. Finally, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals had to explicitly order her, Alina Habba, you gotta go. We are ordering you to leave right now. The way Trump's DOJ tried to get around this was absurd. They argued that just because we're disqualified and deemed to be unlawfully serving as interim United States attorneys, that doesn't mean you said we have to leave the office. It took the Third Circuit to say, No, 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 get out, you're evicted, leave. Like they had to spell it out in the simplest possible terms, because Trump's DOJ was pretending not to understand that being disqualified means you can't hold the position. Now, the Delaware federal courts also report to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So when the Third Circuit said, Alina Habba, you gotta go, even though they didn't specifically mention the Delaware federal prosecutor's name, the writing was on the wall, you're evicted too. You've got to leave. And so this person named Julianne Murray, who was the interim United States attorney for the District of Delaware, announced she's resigning with a very whiny resignation letter. Let me read you parts of this letter because it perfectly captures the victim mentality of these unqualified Trump appointees. Murray wrote, "For 15 years, I fought for the rights of residents of Delaware, both in and out of the courtroom. Being chosen by Trump to serve as the United States Attorney for Delaware was an opportunity to continue to serve Delaware, but with greater impact. I approached every day in a non-political, collaborative manner. Political affiliation was never a consideration in achieving goals during my tenure. Then she gets to the complaints. I naively believed that I would be judged on my performance and not politics. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The highly politicized, flawed blue slip tradition is costing Delaware a U.S. attorney and is affecting the country as a whole. Senator Coons and Senator Blunt Rochester refused to return a blue slip for political reasons, not performance reasons. This is not about advice and consent, but an incredibly flawed tradition. As a result of the Third Circuit's ruling, I have decided to resign as the acting United States Attorney for the District of Delaware." Now, her term didn't get extended by the judges, but when you look at her statement claiming she served the people of Delaware for 15 years, you're probably wondering what she means. Well, before this appointment, she served as the Republican Party of Delaware chair. She was the head of the Republican Party there, not serving the people of Delaware in any prosecutorial capacity. She ran for governor of Delaware and lost. She was chairwoman of the Republican Party of Delaware. I looked at her LinkedIn. She was an attorney general candidate in September 2021, but lost that race too. She ran a law firm. It looks like she ran a small law firm called Murray Phillips PA and Murray Law LLC. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with running a small law firm, but I looked at her background and I don't see anywhere, at least in what she posted publicly, that she was ever a federal prosecutor. I don't see that she worked through the ranks of the U.S. Attorney's Office building experience and expertise. She was a lawyer who became chair of the Delaware Republican Party, and that's why Trump picked her. We're seeing this pattern again and again. People with no federal prosecutorial experience, but who happen to be Republican Party officials or Trump loyalists, getting appointed to run U.S. attorney offices. Alina Habba had no experience as a federal prosecutor, but Trump picked her anyway. Lindsay Halligan out of the Eastern District of Virginia is even worse than the other two I just mentioned. Zero experience, nothing even remotely close to qualifying her, but Trump made her the leader of that office. The guy in the Northern District of New York, even the lead federal prosecutor out of the Southern District of New York, he led the SEC under Trump's first administration, but doesn't have federal prosecutorial background. Trump is systematically putting unqualified political loyalists in these positions instead of following the normal process of appointing experienced prosecutors who know what they're doing. I want to bring in some perspective from Harry Littman, who runs the Talking Feds Substack, podcast, and YouTube channel. Harry was actually a United States attorney. And it wasn't like one day someone said, "Harry, you want to be a U.S. attorney, my guy?" Harry clerked for 2 different Supreme Court justices. He went to top law schools. He worked in federal prosecutors' offices for many years, with distinction, built an experience set, and then became a qualified person to eventually get the job. That's how it's supposed to work. You have all these Trump appointees who quit, resign, and whine about being victims. They throw themselves pity parties complaining that they were blocked for political reasons. But the reality is they weren't prohibited from getting blue slip approval because they're Republicans. People from the opposite party get appointed in all administrations. The issue is they were never federal prosecutors. They didn't know what they were doing. If they were qualified and had appropriate experience, people would look at it differently. Harry made the crucial point that this scheme Trump keeps violating has a reason behind it. A good government reason. The system says stick someone in there temporarily while you get your act together, and then all you have to do is nominate and confirm a valid candidate. Trump's party controls the Senate. It shouldn't be that hard to get qualified people confirmed, but you need some minimal competence. Lindsay Halligan really is absolute zero in terms of qualifications. She has never stepped foot inside a prosecutor's office before Trump appointed her. Julianne Murray appears to have no federal prosecutor experience either. The scheme is sensible. The court appoints an interim, then you make your submission to the Senate, and if you do something professional, the Senate confirms. That's where the Senate comes in with their advice and consent role. Notice what Murray is actually complaining about in her resignation letter. She's upset about the blue slip process. That's where a senator from the state where the appointment is being made can essentially veto the nominee by refusing to return the blue slip form. You can take issue with that process, and Trump certainly has, but it exists as one of the few remaining tools that senators have to exercise some control over appointments in their states. With Lindsay Halligan, Trump has now actually nominated her to be permanently the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. There's no way in the world she's getting confirmed. For starters, she won't even get to the floor because she's so unqualified that the Democratic senators from Virginia will not submit the blue slips. Senators like that little prerogative. Republicans and Democrats alike want to keep that power. Trump already took a run at Senator Grassley, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, saying get rid of the blue slip process. And senators said, no, we like it. This gives us certain powers within our state. Maybe Trump thinks nominating Halligan is a way, along with what's happening in Delaware, to mount a popular assault on the whole blue slip process. But when Murray stands up and gets sulky about being blocked, what she's really criticizing is the entire system of checks and balances. Senator Coons from Delaware, by the way, is a lawyer, Yale Law School graduate, very well respected. Senators often let people from the other party through for these positions, but their job, as long as blue slips exist, is not to just completely permit a political hack to take the office. That's the way it's supposed to run. The court appoints an interim, and then the Senate exercises advice and consent with appropriate screening. Murray's churlish farewell is really an implicit criticism of the whole Trump approach, because she says she's always been non-political, doesn't care what party anyone is from. But compare that to Alina Habba, who said she wanted the job to help turn New Jersey red. Compare it to Lindsay Halligan, who went in to get scalps of Trump's political opponents. Same with appointees in Northern District of New York, Southern District, Central District of California. These are people who are clearly there as political attack dogs, not as professional prosecutors. So when we hear complaints from the Delaware candidate, it really underscores that Trump is doing this wrong. He's violating the law, which is complicated, but more importantly, he's violating the principle behind the law. The way it's supposed to work is if you can get someone through the political process, even if they're not the most qualified, fine. But if you can't, we're not going to let you do an end run around the advice and consent process by just putting in any political loyalist. That's all Trump is thinking about with Halligan and Habba. He wants to prevent the Senate from weighing in and ignore the important role of the district court. Every time another one of these fake prosecutors falls, we explain the labyrinthine legal problem. But there's a bigger policy problem. Trump is trying to get these sorry hacks in there to do his bidding, and the process exists in large part to prevent exactly that. When the system operates correctly and blocks these appointments, it's not just empowering Democratic senators who have that much power in the Trump administration. It's really serving the people who need these offices run properly. Harry made the point that he and his colleagues who became U.S. attorneys were steeped in the notion of making decisions based on law and public safety. You make a lot of discretionary decisions about what cases to bring, and you want to make them in a way that serves the people, not that serves the president, especially this president. Look at what happened in the Eastern District of Virginia as a perfect example. Trump's first pick for interim U.S. attorney was a guy named Eric Siebert, who spent over a decade in that office. He was a career prosecutor, ideologically Republican, Federalist Society member with those views, but he was viewed by the two Democratic senators in Virginia as someone who could carry out the office because he had the background. He'd handled top cases at the Eastern District of Virginia and rose through the ranks. The Democrats said, we can't object to this guy. He's qualified. So Siebert would have gotten a full confirmation vote and would be the U.S. attorney right now for the Eastern District of Virginia. But Donald Trump told him, I need you to go after my enemies. I don't care if there's no case. You've got to go after Comey and James and Schiff and all these people. And Eric Siebert, having been in that office for a long time, said, "Look, I'll be happy to look into any case, but there are no crimes there. Having examined the evidence and seen no prosecutable offenses, I'm not going to bring frivolous cases. I'm not going to compromise the office's integrity." So Trump fired him. But here's the thing. You only get one interim pick. Trump used his one shot on Siebert, and when Siebert wouldn't do what Trump wanted, Trump couldn't legally appoint another interim. So Trump put in Lindsay Halligan anyway, illegally. Now, after everything Halligan has done wrong, from being unlawfully appointed in the first place to all the misconduct in the grand jury room that's been exposed, Trump wants to make her permanent. She has no federal experience. She's literally the worst possible person in terms of qualifications. And she's not going to get the blue slip, not because she's a Trump supporter, but because she's not qualified, and she's already demonstrated with this interim position that she couldn't handle it. Same with Alina Habba. Maybe if she'd shown up and done the job professionally, maybe if she hadn't gone after the mayor of Newark with a politically motivated prosecution and then dismissed the case, maybe if she'd impressed the judges, they would have extended her term. But no, she brought the office down to her very low level, and people said, "We're not giving you a chance at permanency." This person in Delaware, when you look at the background, it's very partisan Republican. These people would never get appointed in a Biden administration or an Obama administration or even a George W. Bush administration. You pick a former federal prosecutor who's risen through the ranks, or maybe a top former state attorney general who won their election and distinguished themselves. You don't pick someone who lost elections and whose main qualification is being a party chair. What bugs me most about this is that the debate will be treated as partisan when it's actually not. As Eric Siebert showed, he's a Republican, and Democrats were fine with him. He would have been confirmed. But it's viewed as if Democrats are blocking nominees because they're from Trump. No, Democrats are blocking them because Trump is picking people consistent with his low moral character instead of picking people qualified for the job. And it's even worse than just picking unqualified people. Trump is picking people who will be his Roy Cohn and do his dirty work. Harry Littman shared his own experience becoming a U.S. attorney. There were 2 Republican senators in Pennsylvania at the time. Neither would have chosen him, but they recognized he was within the range of professional qualifications. Senator Rick Santorum, a very conservative guy, later blocked Harry from a judicial nomination. But for the U.S. attorney position, the professional understanding was that Harry was solid and would run the office responsibly and professionally. That was the inquiry. That's always been the inquiry, more or less. There have been a few crazy senators like Jesse Helms who would be tyrannical about it, but people generally understand this notion. We want pros in there. It's in everyone's interest that each party advances someone who's going to call it straight, apply the law fairly, and run the office professionally. It's the arch politicization by Trumpists who want to put in people who think first about Trump, second about Trump, and third maybe about the law, maybe not. That's the real problem, and they're getting their comeuppance, which we should be heartened by. The dominoes are falling with Habba and Murray and others, and that's a good thing. The system is working, barely, despite Trump's best efforts to break it. Federal judges are standing up and saying no. You can't keep fake prosecutors in these offices indefinitely. Senators are using what little power they have left through the blue slip process to block unqualified nominees. And slowly, these Trump loyalists who thought they could squat in U.S. attorney positions forever are being forced out. But we need to stay vigilant because Trump will keep trying. He'll keep nominating unqualified loyalists. He'll keep attacking the blue slip process and trying to eliminate Senate oversight. He'll keep claiming that blocking his nominees is partisan when it's actually about basic qualifications and professional standards. And his supporters will whine about being victims when they're really just being held to the minimal standards that have always applied. The transformation Trump is attempting, turning U.S. attorney offices into political attack operations run by loyalists with no experience, would destroy the rule of law in this country. These offices prosecute everything from terrorism to public corruption to violent crime. They need to be run by professionals who make decisions based on evidence and law, not by political hacks who take orders from the president about who to target. Every time another fake Trump prosecutor gets forced out, that's a victory for the rule of law. Every time a judge says no, you're disqualified, leave the office, that's the system working. Every time a senator exercises their blue slip authority to block an unqualified nominee, that's checks and balances functioning as intended. So while Julianne Murray whines in her resignation letter about being treated unfairly, while Lindsay Halligan refuses to leave despite being disqualified, while Alina Habba finally got evicted by the Third Circuit, remember what this is really about. It's about whether we're going to have professional, non-political prosecutors running these offices, or whether we're going to let Trump install loyalists who will do his bidding regardless of law or ethics. The answer is slowly becoming clear. The system is pushing back. Not perfectly, not fast enough, but it's pushing back. And that's something to be encouraged by, even as we remain vigilant about Trump's ongoing attempts to corrupt every institution he touches. Stay informed, support the judges and senators who are standing up to this corruption, and make sure everyone understands that blocking these fake prosecutors isn't partisan. It's about basic competence and the rule of law.